There is a kind of evil that doesn't scream. It doesn't come with weapons. It doesn't show visible hatred. It arrives quietly, dressed in ID badges, government roles, and office routines. It hides in everyday life, in small decisions, in automatic excuses, and in silent complicity. This is the most dangerous type of evil. The kind that becomes normal. The kind that becomes banal. In 1961, the world watched the trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. He was the man behind the logistics of the Holocaust. He organized trains, lists, routes. He was the functional architect of the death of millions. But when he stepped into the courtroom, what the world saw was not a monster. He was an ordinary man. Wearing glasses. Polite. Calm. A model bureaucrat. He didn't yell. He didn't deny anything. He showed no emotion. He simply said, "I was just following orders." Again and again. That phrase echoed across the world, and it struck one person in particular, Hannah Arendt. A Jewish philosopher. A refugee. A witness to the rise of Nazism. She expected to see the embodiment of evil. And she found a clerk. Eichmann's trial became more than just a legal proceeding. It became a philosophical revelation. It showed the world that evil doesn't always wear a devil's face. Sometimes it wears a suit. And that's what makes it so effective. From that moment, Arendt developed the concept of the banality of evil, a deeply uncomfortable and dangerous idea. Evil doesn't always stem from hatred, madness, or cruelty. Sometimes it comes from thoughtlessness. When someone refuses to reflect on their own actions. When conscience is switched off. When moral responsibility is outsourced to authority. Ordinary people. Model citizens. Fathers, workers, believers. Yes, they too can become instruments of authoritarian regimes, of genocide, of repression. Not because of cruelty, but because of obedience. That's what makes this kind of evil so dangerous. It doesn't recognize itself as evil. It sees itself as normal. As duty. As procedure. Eichmann didn't hate Jews. He didn't see himself as a murderer. He saw himself as efficient. And here's the core of the wound exposed. A system can mass-produce evil if it teaches every individual not to think, not to judge, just to comply. Now imagine how many political systems in history have been built on that logic. During Nazism, thousands of people actively participated in the extermination of Jews, Roma, homosexuals, and the disabled. Most never touched a weapon. They were accountants, train operators, clerks, doctors, lawyers. Educated people. Just doing their jobs. The same happened under Stalinism. During the Brazilian military dictatorship. During apartheid in South Africa. In Pol Pot's Cambodia. The greatest political tragedies in the world weren't just created by tyrants. They were sustained by legions of the obedient. And why do people obey? Because they believe they have no choice. Because they're afraid. Because they want to keep their jobs. Because it's easier to pretend they don't see. Banal evil feeds on convenience. On comfort. On the desire to keep things running as they are. And systems know this. That's why authoritarian regimes create a culture where thinking is dangerous. Where questioning is a crime. Where silence is rewarded and reflection is punished. The banality of evil is present when a teacher is fired for teaching too much. When a journalist is censored for asking hard questions. When a citizen is arrested for protesting. It's there when compassion is criminalized. When empathy is labeled weakness. When victims are blamed. But don't think this logic is buried in the past. It's alive today, in new forms with new disguises. It's on social media when people are dehumanized for thinking differently. It's in corporations when profit matters more than life. It's in politics when truth is treated as the enemy. It's in justice when the law is applied selectively. It's in society when indifference becomes the standard. And that's why vigilance must be constant. Because evil never announces its arrival. It settles in slowly. First in jokes. Then in speeches. Then in laws. Then in executions. History shows us that the most violent regimes often began looking harmless. What starts as intolerance ends in repression. What starts as misinformation ends in censorship. What starts as dehumanization ends in elimination. That's why we must think. Think deeply. Think bravely. Because thinking is resistance. And thinking today is almost an act of rebellion. The question is, are you thinking for yourself? Or are you just repeating? Are you seeing the signs? Or pretending they're not there? The banality of evil depends on us. On our apathy. On our routine. On our fear. But it can also be defeated by us. Through awareness. Through ethics. Through reflection. Here on Forbidden Dossier, we don't give you ready-made truths. We give you questions. We open files. We reveal patterns. Because often all an authoritarian system needs is for no one to ask anything. But you're not here by accident. You're here because you feel something is wrong. Because you know that history isn't always told the way it happened. Because you want to see beyond the surface. This is your place. Truth is a process. And questioning is the first step. The documents exist. The interpretation is still yours.